Namaste. Today, let's consider what the last about 80 years in India, whether the economy has improved or not. The experts call it Modinomics because it's considered as a unique model. Modi ji said it's a Gujarat model or something. Are we better off with this economics, or we have to redo the economics differently? Let's consider it properly now. Many, including Subramaniam Swamy, are saying Indian economy needs new economics policy because the objective now is not very clear. So what about having a clear objective? Why it has to be incoherent now without, day in and day out announcements are coming, and they're not joined by a unifying goal for how we progress. So any economic has to be coherent. If it is not coherent, and it will be like a banana republic having an economics. How we know the fall of many African and some other countries. You remember that Idi Amin government or other government, they fall. Say in one government, they didn't know the economics. They thought it is they introduced currencies, everything, and it is going recently also. So many economies failed and bailouts were given out. Even now, Sri Lankan economy it can't pay its debts. It's not about the debts. It may have the assets. It may have, but the cash, where is the cash? The cash internationally hard to pay. So for that, the economy has to be coherent. It has to be following a structured pattern. Is India doing it? Or is India just wherever Modi ji went, he signed a lot of defense contracts, giving away a lot of money, whether it will be useful to India or not, all those things we need to consider. The provisional estimates by national income by National Statistics Office in 2021-22 fourth quarter GDP growth rate figure was 4.1%. April 1 to March 31st, 2022 in annual equivalent terms compared to fourth quarter figures for the previous year 2020-21. That is, but let's consider this is comparison between 2021 to 2022. But if you want to so we'll consider 2021 first quarter, April 1 to June 30. That is what it is comparing to even make it 4.1%. The GDP growth rate, according to NSO, was minus 23.8%, which is when the COVID-19 pandemic began spreading. That means compared to that minus 23.58%, now 4.1% growth. How deceiving are the statistics? The combined subsequent and remaining 3 quarters of 2021 annualized growth rate was negative. So it's not growth. And that's for the fiscal year of 4 quarters, the GDP annual to 2021 was placed at minus 4.8%. Points to note: the following two conclusions are important to the government for a badly needed reality check. First, Subramaniam Swamy says Indian economy had been declining in growth rate since 2016. This is what BJP stalwart and former Indian finance minister is saying. Since 2016, 2016, and the growth rate since 2016 is falling, and it fell below what was earlier sneeringly referred to by economists in the Congress ruled period 1950s and 77 as the Hindu rate of growth rate of 3.5% to 4% per year growth rate in GDP. So even compared to that, it's falling. Second, the Modi government should recognize, this is what Subramaniam Swamy is writing, should recognize that during the present Prime Minister's tenure since 2014, so we talked about 2016, now he talks about 2014, his plan for Vikas is more genuinely akin to the Hindu rate of growth during Jawaharlal Nehru days. The government, from Jawaharlal Nehru government, the BJP was against it. They were talking about everything wrong, this. But eventually, with this, from 2014 to now, 2016 to now, they took a very good growth rate to the past oldest rate. History repeats itself. You think about the history and you want to rewrite the history, but you went back in economics to the prehistoric rate or Jawaharlal Nehru days. The decline in GDP growth rate from 2016 till today is thus a national shame. He says, I'm not saying, national shame for a dispensation that claims to bring Vikas to the country. So BJP shoots on its own foot. That's what Subramanian Swamy is an economist. He's a world-renowned economist. He was a professor, and he has to say what he says. So this is what it is. Not only as a growth rate of GDP, he says GDP has been consistently declining. See, we all think, this Modinomics is working very well, but Swamy says it's not. But the brazen but rosy prediction, he says prediction, rosy brazen prediction. In other words, a false prediction that were impossible to achieve without major reform, such as $5 trillion GDP by 2024-25, all talk, no action, have been publicized in the media, which in 2019, when Modi ji announced the goal meant it 14.8% per year growth rate GDP. So, based on a 14.8% year growth rate that he wanted to bring in with his policies, the GDP would be $5 trillion economy. Ours would have been 5. That's what the prediction, based on a false premise of understanding. I don't say people make a false promise, but their calculation or the fundamentals are not correct. It's building a castle on a sand. I'm prepared to debate. That's what Swamy is saying. I'm prepared to debate publicly with any government official, prove to the Indian public that Modinomics to date is a gigantic failure. BJP stalwart says it's a gigantic failure because all along I've been reading, Swami was saying, giving options for the finance minister at that time, previous to Sitaraman and whoever, any prime minister, any finance minister, he's giving Subramanian Swami is giving suggestion that they didn't take into account. So it's not realistic. Even I put a video before saying you at that time, if the government announced ratio amount to all Indians, it's all paper. The economy is just a paper. If they just said this what happened in Australia when everything was falling, Kevin Rudd announced ratio amount of $900, 2 or 3 times he paid 900 to each family, and the economy never went down. So I also suggested they had money at that time, and the Reserve Banks, the bonus from the Reserve Bank, the dividend from them, it was available to them. If they announced that amount at that time, and maybe 50,000, 1 lakh to each family, the economy would have bounded. And Swami, in his own ways, he said, take away, nobody's paying income tax above 10%, or the persons paying income tax was, the percentage is very low in India. So he always insists that, why do we have income tax? Rather, you just build this economy with the licensing fees of the very available resources tax. So that's why he fought for the spectrum, the license. I mean, it was taken away by the political masses by just paying a pie for a big profit for them. So he was always, resources has to be properly licensed and revenue derived from them, like Gulf countries, the oil is a major rose. So so many countries didn't have income tax, no tax at all. So that's what he was saying. Indians were not paying income, but the government went the other way of taxing everything and forcing people into taxing and all. But ultimately, the government machinery was at the back of opposition, always going behind the opposition to, harass them in the name of tax, and that's politics. I mean, just remove politics from the economics, probably that country will prosper. You set a Western country, they exactly say what they will do as far as the finances or economy is concerned, and they implement it. After they say something and they are voted to power, they do it. In India only, people say, I will do, without giving the ways and means to do that and methodology to do that. That's what happened in Modinomics also. On and off, many announcements. It happened in Congress regime also. There is no clear-cut path. There is no better government, no Congress except Narasimha Rao government and Manmohan Singh government. At that time, growth rate was very high because they just were in their mind. They were concentrating on the liberalization and economics that suited India. It's not that they just adopt foreign Western philosophies. Now, what we see is arms race and natural resources are not utilized properly for the GDP to grow up. Now, okay, what can the government do? That's also big questions there. A coherent policy, just economic policy, that's based on, there is a big problem in democracy. I tell you later. That is based on clearly stated objective targets. Priority. What is your priority? What is your stated? Make Indian is not an objective. So because you know every country will do the same thing. Whatever you do should be unique, and it has to create impetus to all the external world. You can't isolate in this connected world. You can't isolate the saying, I want to improve my country for, but what is the need in the world that if I can supply and your products are marketed properly. The Chinese took the initiative. They had the manpower, and they allowed investment to the manufacturing industries. So with those facilities, with those manpower, they made it a production center, the world's production center, and cheap products came out initially with their own designs and with their own R&D, but they allowed custom, because initially they copied everything. Then they found out it's better to embrace, invite the market economy, big Western country, and they were trying to be part of the patent regime and other thing. They fall into place. Then all from Western countries, the designing was done there, and the production was done in China. That's why China economy boomed. So China didn't say, I want make China my aim, but the market decided that China is economically sound to manufacture. That's what they created. But just by saying, by forcing Western countries or anybody to come into India, when the labor at the higher level, IT, it's high, and the infrastructure is not there, and we didn't invite. Okay, what the investment will come only when you keep something unique. You just, where is unique? IT is very unique to India. So that's what Manmohan Singh regime and the previous regimes concentrated on. That has grown up. So we have to take where IT is not employed in any industry, the government impetus to get uniqueness of that IT industry embedded in all everything. So it will become a unique hub for products that any design comes from West also. There will be the IT backed up. So anything that the West thinks and or even Indian thinks, and that is totally capability is enabled by IT. That is our core. If our goal, it's my own opinion, and this is only one thing I'm saying. There are many other ways. I mean, there are many other industries you can concentrate on instead of relying on Reliance and Adani Group. The main aim of Reliance, I mean, the main fundamental is from petroleum. The Adani groups is also mining. So in India, where are those? Okay, you concentrate on some groups, their their dependability on the resources from somewhere else. Then how can your country grow? So Adani goes and buys mining somewhere. But mining itself, the coal and petroleum is going. I mean, in few years, in few decades, maybe the environmental pollution, the total uh, the earth is rejecting petroleum products and coal products. So we can't go behind some industrial groups. They rely mainly on the the discontinuing fossil fuels. We are going to discontinue. So their core is that instead of making them understand and go to other sectors, if the government backs with some settled industries, then the objective, the realization of what is happening in the world is lacking. So, okay, in Indian economy, it's not that somebody achieved a great success in economy, they are voted to power. No, Atal Bihari Vajpayee government lost badly 2004, despite confidence advancing the general. So they had very good record of economy and could not, BJP can't make an electoral comeback for 10 years. BJP is lucky now because the Supreme Court judgment, they were canceling 2G spectrum licenses, Raman, all those things, they are not related to economics. But economy has to clearly state objective, targets, priority, strategy to achieve the targets. Okay, this is the line. A new economic policy should be clearly stating its objective, targets, priorities, strategy to achieve those targets, and an intelligent and transparent resource mobilization. Resource can be human resource can be anything. How you want to achieve. So the clear-cut objective, priority, strategy to achieve the target, intelligent, transparent resource and mobilization of plan. Do we have now? No. At present, we have an incoherent hotspot set of public announcements only. This is what Subramaniam Swamy also saying, with no accountabilities or logic. If a finance minister announces today one, and Modi ji announces one, the scrapping of money, the 500, the 1,000 rupees gone, all those things, who is accountable for it? If Reserve Bank did it, they are accountable. But Modi ji announced it, and so far nobody took responsibility for it. So this is this. If there is a problem, if you take responsibility, we can correct it. If nobody takes responsibility, how can we correct it? So there is a problem in democracy and market economy going together. But the West found a way to have democracy as well as market economy, because there is set of rules and everybody strictly follows the rule. 8th year of tenure for BJP. Although some social religious successes have helped it to rise to the morale of the party workers, 2024, they were looking at 2024 general election to come back. But the matter now is not even in Uttar Pradesh, they don't have high margins, very narrow margin. West Bengal, Punjab, the election they lost, and it's not going well now. So they have to have a strategy rethinking. Economic failure is number one because the cost, spiraling cost, and nothing went up. The pandemic at that time, so many problems. Pandemic is, nobody understood it, but in the pandemic time, money, nobody had money. The hospitals were charging abnormal, and where was the control? So the market economy is not clearly understood in India. That was the biggest issue. Market economy comes with set of rules. We don't even know what the rules are. Then either you have to be liberal, or if you want to be strict, the rules have to be very strict. If you don't have the rules properly, and if we are fighting all the time with West for this, that, then how can democracy and market rules go together? That's why in these circumstances only, when spiraling prices, now a set of rules, this time only autocracy can come. That's what, if I don't know if the aim of this government is creating autocracy by their acts. So many observers feel like that. The Gulf countries and more, they are saying you are alienating, so they are boycott. I mean, they may have their thinking. They say Kashmir is wrong. Somebody stated Nupur Sharma, or somebody said something that's wrong. Islam, you are anti-Islam. All those things come because there is a wind. That's a wind. They had the. They are following what the government is doing for so long, and they understood it is going in a different direction. Then that can appease all the sections of the society. That comes out now. It's not for one incident this happened, because they were watching for many, all these 8 years, and so it comes out now. The economic failure is becoming the main issue now. This could drastically unsettle even the most conservative forecast in 2024. Democracy could be threatened by desperate political extremists. In every nation, democracy is structured on 4 pillars. This everybody accepted. People say 5 pillars, 6 pillars, 4 pillars. We just settle with 4 pillars. That is, one, independent, functionally independent institution, maybe Supreme Court, the executive branch, and the ministers, the legislative branches. They function independently. They should have been. There should not be a coercion. But what is happening is, now only one institution wants to take away the powers of the other. Then that can't be a proper democracy. Democracy is structured on 4 pillars. Electoral legitimacy. Election should be clear, and electoral, even chief election officers. I mean, this government touched every aspect of independent institution. They wanted to change, and they wanted unilateral power at the center. So it's not, it happened totally, but the intention is already always there. Any opportune moment, that's very very it's not matured thinking about democracy in one particular party, and which didn't understand the fundamental. So the fundamentals are 4 pillars: electoral legitimacy, constitutional safeguards constitutionally, civil rights are safe. How many civil rights are derided every day, every minute? The social media pounded, everything is pounded by the government now. Functionally independent institution and embedded account of zero accountability. Because the people see for the major portion of this period, you can, the rules and the regulations every day newly introduced, and they're thought of as suppressing the opponents. Any single view somebody talked about, it is taken as against the government, and all the media, all the government institutions like CBI, RAW, IT, enforcement, everything behind that person. If it is going behind the ruling party also, ruling party legislatures or party politicians, then there's no problem. We can think that this government is enforcing all rules, regulation properly, but mostly 99% it was targeting only opponent. That's a bit of, so democracy is under threat, so many people say. But we look at the 4 pillars of electoral legitimacy, constitutional safeguards, functionally independent institution, and embedded accountability. They were shaken up. That's why this problem came. So that's a basis of economic stability. If democracy, if you have a declared democracy and these fundamentals should be clear, then only that economy will boost. But there's a conflict between we talk about very intriguing subject. There's a conflict between market and democracy that requires to be solved. A flourishing, vibrant democracy, that's Subramanian Swami is also saying, that empowers a relatively poor, uncorrupted majority to vote, and hence can influence in legislation against the relatively rich capitals, an entrepreneurial minority, and a thriving market economy driven by a rich empowered minority with disproportionate access to capital, skills, and media and other networks, has the capacity to undermine the electoral system through strategic funding of the same. So market and democracy has a conflict, already has a conflict, even West. So if we are a long established democracy, India can solve that. We can see the negative side of the West as well. So we see the positive side of ourselves. So it is a very opportune moment for India to show the world that market and democracy can go together, and the conflict there's a conflict, but because the top rich, 1% rich, through their money power and their networking and their capacity to undermine the electoral system through the strategic funding of the same, they hijack the electoral system. So they fund. So their candidates are winning. So this is a problem of the democracy, where it is embedded with the market system. Therefore, there's new dynamics needed. Dynamics of democracy, especially in India. Narasimha Rao understood it Manmohan Singh to some extent, because people thought he was not given a free will to do whatever he wanted. So they also lost the election when the economy was booming. They lost the election because they were projected wrongly or rightly based on other things, but not on the economy. Economy is good, but what about this? So people just voted for somebody who says they will do something, but in India, it's we just forget what they said yesterday. That's how designing reform is most important, because leaders initiating reforms must win elections. So if you have a no, no, can be electorally successful if so designed that the losers from it. We saw Japan. Look at it's a opaque system, opaque financial system, but there is no prudential norms. Prudential norm, how you finance. So there is norms for funding, interest rate, other accountability is not there, and it creates cronyism, right? So that is oligarchies, cronyisms are created by this system that have to be pleased. So the moneyed have to be pleased, and the big institution, the big institution can do whatever they want in a free and opaque financial system also. That has got a big problem. United States, free economy, but as we talked before, the government should have some control over, because the welfare of the nation rests in the hands of the government. It can't just say free economy, go away. I don't have my control on that. It should have something, but it's not total. It has to give deregulate many things, but it should keep something in his. So whenever interventions is needed, it has to come. So because the in US thought everything free, I don't want to interfere. What happened was in 2007 and 2009, global financial crisis, because anybody can buy and sell houses, and they inflate the prices. At that time, the inflated prices just burst. The inflated price of real estate just burst, and it one third of the two-thirds of the prices have dropped in quite sudden fashion, and it was a very big crisis. But America just, it's not solved yet. It is still mechanized. Just put some sign on that. It can flood anything. It funded the institutions which did wrong things. The banking finance, the government funded the very institution which were the cause of the financial crisis. That's how can we say that's a solved problem. And then it introduced prudential norms. Prudential norm rules and regulations. They all the time, these banks, whenever you got money and support group who funds your elections, they can dictate what you want, they want. So that can come anytime. So it's not solved, it's a burning, and it's under the ashes, the fire is there. So Japan or US, if you consider Australia, it's quite different. Here, it's not a totally free. The Australian model sounds a little bit better. It didn't have any recession. So how? Because very easy understanding. So it has to be beneficial to everybody. One can't take away uh, control. So we have to study deeply some country models. One of that is Australia, New Zealand. Yeah, New Zealand is different. They had a free real estate market. That's different thing. Anybody can buy. Australia had control over foreign ownership. So in free market, you can't just come and buy and throw away when the market is down. You can't just throw away. And one more thing there in New Zealand, there's no transaction. There is a 2%, 1%. You pay each transaction to the government. That's not there. In Australia, it is there. So any transaction, so you can't just buy and sell. There is a cost involved in it. So stamp duty. So that's holding on a little bit. If anything happens, the New Zealand faced recession with US, but Australia didn't. But it didn't mean Australian, but we have a problem now, the inflated prices. Deregulation in demo can be electorally successful if so designed that the losers from it, usually toots who organize quotas and licenses for the rich for a price, and because deregulation implicit in reforms make them immediately lose the rent. So most of the moneyed, they want rent on whatever they did. So patent or building or businesses, property, they want a the unorganized poor who cannot, they live on daily. They can't control anything. The early returns. The reforms may not be visible, or inflation will boom in galloping inflation will come if it's not proper. Deregulation should all mean, it doesn't mean we reject government intervention. All we talked about, safety net should be there, affirmative action should be there, market failures, when market failed in US, when in 2007 and 2000 and global financial, if the property markets fail, just leave it. I mean, that's what you undertook. The market economy is leaving it to the market. But government intervention, if it is to the poor, okay. In Australia, they pay money to the families. In America, they pay to the financial institution. So they think financial institution save people. In Australia, they thought the people are saving financial institution. That's quite different. So erring people you can't support. But democratic institutions have to be empowered now. So if we want a good result, public disorder arising from any rapid deregulation brings in public disorder. It happened in Russia in 1991. Russians underwent, but the reaction, you see the reaction, democracy, when the economy fell, Russians underwent chaos and misery, dictatorship came in. So it can come. Even some rulers, they want to be in control. They may bring in chaos in the economy deliberately. So it's possible. So the intention should be democracy first, then it can't. Economy first. That is America. Economy, democracy first. They have two. So at least they have to balance it. So one-sided, they can't balance it. I want economically, my country has to be sound at the cost of democracy. No, it won't work. It will become autocracy later. So what about the kings ruled the West Asia, but that is their tradition for many years. They think from that they derive something, but normally the total world is morely inclined to democracy. So to survive with democracy and market economy, it has to be properly understood. Market systems are not a free for all. It's capitalism with rules of transactions. So it's capitalism. It's not free for. You can't do anything with money. I mean, everything with money. That's what India misunderstood now. All the help is given to capitalists, and without emphasizing rules of transaction. So what happened to Harshad Mehta? We don't forget. And so in both regimes, Congress is as bad as BJP, but we thought this government would be better and the economy would boom, but it's not happening. That's why we have that introspection. It's not against any party. They have to reform themselves to make India better, and the economy sounds good. With that provision, market system capitalism works since the principal driver is capital. When capital is the driver, it has to work with rules and transaction, and its deployment, the capital's deployment is not exactly for profit, as many companies understood in India. The capital and deployment for innovation and raise productivity. So in West, we see the prices are coming down of each and every company. The big companies, they work very hard to bring the prices of products down. So innovate. So for that, they have to introduce innovation. They have to raise the productivity. That's how prices have come down, necessities of life are met. So this is how we have to work. And so, yeah, so this is how India, not only India, any country which wants to follow democracy as well as market economy can flourish by just retrospecting all these things. Thank you. I'm Natarajan. I can answer your questions if you want and put it in my team. Thank you.